Let's face it, the presidential task force that was formed immediately after the 2022 election was political and therefore a scam in the education sector. The confusion that we are facing currently in the implementation of CBC is a result of some of the recommendations that were made by that task force. It has messed up the education system, and it is high time that we talked about this. Prior to this task force, the previous government was already implementing CBC. The transition from primary to secondary school, the junior secondary school, even to senior secondary school, there were a lot of infrastructural development. In fact, the Ministry of Education then had actually established classes in high schools where students will be transiting from primary for the JSS. But when this task force came into being, a lot of things changed. And therefore, what happened was that JSS was domiciled at primary. And that means that the infrastructure that had already been put in place at high school became useless. And that was a big waste. When you're a task force, you must look at the previous systems that have been put in place, the previous structures, which they never actually looked into before they made some of the recommendation. A lot of money had been used by the government to establish classrooms for JSS in high school. So that was a mess, and they have to take responsibility. The current government has to take responsibility of that kind of wastage. Secondly, there has been an argument about where should we domicile JSS. Of course, so far, JSS has been domiciled at primary, which is not a bad thing. But there are certain things that we have to agree on. That going forward, grade 9, grade 10, 11, and 12 should actually be domiciled in high school. And I have my reasons why I'm making these statements. Already as we talk now, the Form 4s, the current Form 4 class, when they transit or when they exit, there will be a lot of classrooms in high school. In fact, we know of schools that have 12 streams of the current Form 4s, even more than that. So you can imagine the waste that we are going to have when these current Form 4s exit high school. And yet we still talk about having grade 9 in primary school that doesn't have the infrastructure. So are we going to continue to encourage this kind of waste in our education system? Why can't we transit the grade 8 currently in primary school to high school so that the classrooms that are going to be left vacant by the exiting Form 4s can be made into use? So these are things that we really need to consider. Let us stop the politics of Kuppet and NAT, because their intention here is about numbers. Kuppet thinks that if we have the grade 9, 10, 11, and 12, and even grade 8 and 7 at high school, then they would have larger numbers when it comes to the enrollment of teachers who will be subscribing to Kuppet. And the same is also informed by NAT. And that is the reason the politics of the unions is actually what is bringing this confusion. Recently, the principals of high school had their annual conference in Mombasa, and one of the things that came out very clearly was the fact that they have a lot of infrastructure, and they're worried that when the Form 4s exit, then there would be a lot of classrooms, or many classrooms, unoccupied if the current grade 8 does not transit to high school. And these are realities, these are facts. If this does not happen, then we are going to have a lot of wastage in terms of the numbers of classrooms that will be vacant and occupied, simply because we insist that grade 9 should be at primary level. Let us be realistic when it comes to issues of wasting government resources. Because, of course, the previous argument was okay, that in class 7 and class 8, these children were still young enough. They should have been with their parents. That is acceptable. And that is exactly what has happened. Now, what has changed? Because we realize that ordinarily, even when we look at the previous system, 844, high schoolers who are actually beginning their study at grade 9. That is in Form 1. Form 1 is essentially grade 9. And therefore, the argument that they are still young doesn't hold any water. And therefore, we cannot go by that argument. So the best thing to do is to have the current grade 8 transit to grade 9 in high school and not at primary. Thank you very much. I hope this gets into our leaders. Let us reconsider our positions. Let us stop the politics of unions. Let us stop the politics that comes with government and make education non-political. Be blessed.